kind of good time to work with midges. You know, often or not, the big hatches during the night end up earlier on in the morning with the spent midges going down on the surface. There's still some hatch going on, and if you was to look real close at that water, which you're probably not going to do, but nevertheless, I mean, they're just hundreds and thousands of midges just moving off away downstream, and trout generally take advantage of that too before the sun reel gets too high. There's a little bit of depth there, a little bit of water speed, so one single shot, about a size 6 or a couple of size 8s will be generally good enough to get the fly down close to the riverbed. You want to get it too tight to the riverbed. There's a lot of moss and structure there that you hang your fly in. You tend not to want to hang your fly up too much in the zones where the fish are at, because just jerking it out often will frighten them off. So you just kind of got to mess around with that a little, so you get, most of the time, good productive drifts without getting hung up. Well, I got a little tiny yarn indicator on here, and I moved down the system, and I added, with a surgeon's knot there, my additional section which the fly is attached to, but I also created a little small stop knot there so the shot doesn't move down the line. A red Midge pattern, that's kind of one I like at times early on in the morning, and there's no guarantee it's going to be the right fly. They may choose black. You just never know. You know, midge fishing is kind of strange in that respect. Although, you know, by definition of shape and profile, the fly may be the same. Sometimes the coloration can make a big difference. And so you're essentially just going to cast up and drift down the flies in between those zones, and hopefully we'll get a fish on before too long. Making upstream presentations here. We don't really want to get upstream with those fish and spook them, so we're going to work up towards them. The essence really a lot of midge fishing, end of the story, really is to use long leader systems. You know, and people sometimes say, oh, well, you know, how can I cast a 15, 16, 17, 18 foot leader system? Well, truth of the matter is, it really not a lot of difference from casting a 9 or a 10 foot leader system. You just got to exercise a sufficient line speed to get good turnover. And that's, you know, very much related to how you build your system up in the first place. Typically what I do with this kind of water that's in front of me, I kind of, what we call fantail fashion fish it from left to center to right and then work the way back. Don't consistently keep casting over exactly the same zone of water. Like everything else, you know, those fish wise up to seeing the same old thing coming down on top of them, time in and time out. Another thing too is don't let the fly line creep down too close to you either, because it makes it a little more difficult to pick up the recast. Pretty much I keep about a rod length of line out in front of me, something in that region. Enables you to roll cast it out, pick it up, and then set it back upstream again. It's important when you fish in an upstream mode or at any point in time where the line is moving back towards you that you recover it in such a way as that you don't actually cause the fly to be pulled and or dragged back towards you, but at a pace where with very little rod movement you can raise the rod and set the hook. If you've got all this massive slack line out here like this, you know, it's not always easy to raise the rod and set the hook. So I keep the rod at approximately this position, not low to the water, not too high either. One thing that you kind of really got to concentrate on when you fish in long leader systems is good line speed, and to some extent keep a nice wide open loop in your casting stroke. You know, you're not interested in throwing dead tight loops and stuff like that, because that's going to likely cause you to tangle. And another thing I tend to do is I throw a lower back cast and a high forward cast, so I'm coming back over like this, and by definition of doing that, see, I'm creating this wider loop. You see that? Low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high. You notice also when I make my forward cast, I don't aim my fly line at the water. I kind of stop my rod, so to all intents, watch again, I'll demonstrate that. I stop my rod short of that, so everything turns over and lands down on the surface of the water. And we got a decent fish on here, I think, Jim. Less likely to spook the fish too when you get a nice soft land in the line. That was kind of a good example of that because the line come down, touched on real gently, and immediately that fish took the fly. That line had probably hit the water and made a big splash. The odds of us hooking up here would have been probably not real good. You got some ledges around here, so you just got to kind of watch a little way these fish are going to run you, because if you're not careful they can run you into those ledges, get around them, and you get in trouble in a hurry and you're going to lose them. That's a nice brown trout we got on over there, so I'm just going to move across there so I can deal with them a little bit more in this open water. You know, one big mistake I see a lot of anglers do is they hook a fish and they stand in the same place and they got a fish 20, 30 yards downstream and they expect the fish to come towards them in extremely fast current. That ain't the way to do it. The further away they are from you, the more chance you got of losing them. Over here on my right is one of my fellow guide friends, Jimmy T. He's my net man for the day. And that's what it's all about. You don't have to rush fish. That's the reason why a lot of fish are lost anyway. The angler's too concerned more about, like, I got to get that fish in real fast. Well, you know what? Just take your time with them. Hang on now. We've still got some kick left in that fish. Huh? Yeah. You got that line twisted around his gill cover or something, that fish. Thanks, Jim. Good net job there. You did. Would you like to hold that rod for me, Jim? Ain't that just a dandy fish on a midge? Yeah, hard to believe, huh? That's a typical beautiful White River brown. Good? I'm gonna let this little guy go. The male, incidentally, of this fish. Good job, Jim. Thanks. That's a size 16 red midge. Just got a little tag in the tail of some crystal flash. I think a lot of times, you know, at times the fly can make a difference, but other times it's more the presentation value that makes that difference. You know, that's always, most certainly where midge fishing is concerned, your presentation values are very important, as they are with dry fly fishing. Because you're largely fishing for fish which are in the surface, and they're much more wary when they're in the surface than they are compared to looking at their food sources coming along close to them on the bed of the river. I got a camera behind me, so that's kind of giving you a perfect view about what we're talking about here. If I make direct upstream presentations, and I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong, but the deal is this, is that the fly line is generally, but not always, preceding the indicator and the fly, which kind of makes the fish wary. If I bring my relative angle of presentation more, in this case from my right to my left, my fly is over there to the left side of my fly line. So I'm not interfering with my drift by likely showing the fish the fly line before the fly. Show you again. Roll cast line, and we're going to come from our right to our left. And then we go in the opposing direction, from right to left, okay? And then we just bring the rod across to the left-hand side. Watch again. I'm going to pick up, cast upstream, bring the rod across to the left-hand side. Keeps the fly line well clear of the indicator and the fly. Another thing too is, even though I know those fish are upstream, I don't want to be too close to them, because if I get too close, A, I limit my zone of what I call track of fish in that fly, but secondly, also, I don't leave myself sufficient room to pick my line up. So back up downstream from where you're actually fishing. Exactly what I was talking about. Keep the line out of the way of the fish, and the odds are they'll see your fly first and not anything else that worries them up. and we get us a rainbow. Whoop, there's a jumper. And we just get this fish back to us. It's amazing how many fish you can pull out a very small pocket of water. You know, if you fish in the right manner where you don't wise them up to the fact you're there. But ultimately, of course, you're going to catch a high percentage of them, and they're still going to stay there under these existing water conditions. Just go away and leave it and come back again about half an hour later after the fish have rested and got kind of settled back in again. Come on, guy. Well, that's pretty good, wasn't it? Didn't take long to get into one of those. There we go. Yarn indicators, regardless of whether you use the O-ring technique of attachment, and these are very, very small O-rings incidentally. You know, I'm not going to use a really big obtrusive indicator here, and definitely when midge fishing is concerned. So it's very small, and or you've used the double line loop technique where you've folded it over and you've clinched that in. But anyway, the thing is this, is that yarn, you can trim it down. A lot of times a big indicator when you're fishing in a situation like this causes the fly to drag. There's just too much surface movement. You get adverse effects due to wind direction coming upstream, across stream, and it catches that indicator and it drags everything around a little bit more. So the smaller the indicator you use, the better. And you can just keep trimming this down, because essentially all you need to know is where your fly's at, and that little indicator is going to tell you that. It's not really there to support the fly in any great sense of the word, because there's not a lot of depth there, and you're fishing a very, very short line too. Just don't continually cast over the zone that you're fishing. Cast upstream, and at the final point in time when needed, set the fly and line back across stream to where you're going to drift and fish your fly. That's a nice fish. Well, really all I did, I done a couple of different things. I changed my relative angle of position to where I was fishing, because I wanted to get a kind of a different angle. You know, lights changing, and I'm kind of wary about, or shall we say knowledgeable about, how light influences the visibility of a fly to a fish's eye. And I changed my fly too, a little. You know, I think at times fish wise up to seeing the same old thing, time in and time out. We got what looks to me right now to be a pretty damn nice brown trout on there. There we go, that's a nice fish. Them old brown trout, they're crafty, boy. They know how to try and weed you out of getting them in a net or whatever, but whatever it takes to try and get that fish netted, that's what we need to do. You can wear them down to some extent when you're using heavy equipment, but you know, we're using, well actually in fact I changed a tippet down to 6X here anyway, and got a much smaller fly on, because I know these fish, you know, I fished over them for a good long time, and I've wised a bunch of them up, but they become, shall we say, knowledgeable of just the relative angles of presentation you're offering them over and over and over and over and over again. So what I like to do, I like to rest the water for a little bit, which is what I did. I went back over there and sat down for about 10 minutes and all. I changed my fly, and more importantly, I changed my relative angle of presentation. The choice was right, and I got this pretty damn good brown on. Well, you know, I hooked that fish way back over there, and that fish took off downstream. And if you look real careful here, you see the rock structure we're dealing with. We got these drop-offs, these ledges, these deep cuts and channels. And if one of those fish gets that far away from you, he gets on the other side of one of these ledges, it's pretty much goodbye, because he knows exactly how to tuck himself in there and get you off. You know, don't hang on, you know, make sure you, that's another interesting thing too. I always set my release on my reels really, really slack. Not to a point where the line spins off, but pretty much virtually zero resistance. And a reel to me that don't allow me to do that, I don't care for too much, to be honest, because I know how fast those fish can move, and you want a reel that instantly releases that line for you in a hurry. Come on, fish. Come on, fish. Come on, fish. been pretty good to you for a while. The one thing I learned over the years, you know, when you fish, if we just keep his head upstream, and he'll generally float back, and my good friend there, Mr. Jim Traylor, will get that fish soundly in the net. Well, thanks, Jim. Award yourself a CDM. Cadbury's Dairy Milk Chocolate. Huh? These browns, you know, the way they twist and turn, you see what this fish did? He got this line all turned and twisted around him. He gets up right here in the back of their mouths and sometimes around the backs of the gill plates, but anyway, to say the least, I'm well pleased with that. That's a damn beautiful fish. Good job, man.